when I started, I guess, backing up my health and weight loss journey at over 400 pounds, I was not only not engaged, but I was also completely single. So in the last, whatever, it's been 2.5 years, a number of things have changed. One of them being me getting married and my wife getting pregnant. And now I can join you on the podcast, which is of course my pleasure. Just 60 seconds or so on where I started out in the summer of 2022. A few things came together that I guess were eye-opening to me in terms of needing to make a few changes physically, mentally, and in a few other places. One of them being that being over 400 pounds. I can't give an exact weight because if you've seen some of my earlier videos, I was getting an error on my scale, which was one of the wake-up calls that I didn't know was a thing. I guess pre-COVID, it was starting with a 3 back then, which was bad, but an error was a lot worse. The scale starts speaking English, and it's a real problem. And so a few other things happened around that time point. I flew for the first time since the pandemic, and I had to ask for if they had a seatbelt extender or if that was like a thing I didn't know was a thing. And I guess just it never crossed my mind. And again, it took a few years off of air travel because all my work didn't stop traveling and whatnot. And so that was another wake up call. And then a lot has transpired in the last, I guess, 2.5 years, but down about 150 pounds, engaged, married, expecting father, still trying to squeak in the last 50, 60 pounds before my son is born. It's a race now to the end of September, but I don't want to bore you too much with the background, but that's where we are.
Dave, congratulations.
That, Thank you.
Nothing boring about that, bro.
It's been a crazy 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Super exciting. So Dave, walk me through the moment that your wife told you that she was pregnant. How did you feel? I want to hear everything about that moment.
So it's kind of wild. No one's actually ever asked me, but it's kind of wild how it happened. I was on a work trip in California at the end of January. My wife had never been to California, and I have family in the Bay Area, so she came out after that. She claims she didn't know before then. We'll see. But one of the things that was dawning on me when we were visiting my family in the Bay Area was that this wouldn't have been possible 2 years prior. One, because I wasn't married at the time or dating, but also because I couldn't fit in an airplane seat. I certainly didn't have like the mental strength to buy 2 plane seats, or I don't even know what you do at that point in time. It was already sort of a more meaningful trip to me than like just an accounting trip for work to like sign off on the systems implementation. That was not so meaningful, to be honest. But she walks in one morning, and we had been trying, but not for long. And we're both in our early 30s. I still had some weight to lose. I wasn't thinking it would necessarily happen that quickly. And she says, I have these like early tests. Do you want like to be with me when I take one? Like they're like 7 days earlier than the other ones. I don't know any of this, but like, and so I'm sure, like, of course, like I especially because I'm a little bit suspicious at this point. And so sure enough, she takes it, and like whatever, 10 minutes later, it's positive. And I'm like, no way. Like, we haven't been trying. Also, like, it's happening in California. We just the night before, I took her out to this nice restaurant, had this whole discussion about how like what sort of a big deal it was for me to be here, even though it was a work trip, just because I could do it. But had like a lot. I got like weirdly deep for me eating a steak that usually doesn't happen. And now the next morning, I'm like speechless looking at this little thing, and I'm like in my head, because I'm an accountant, I'm like, okay, but it's the early one. Like, how reliable is this? Like, am I a dad right now? Like, is it? And so then, like, couldn't focus at all that day. It was the last day of sign off. It was like a big day for me at work. No idea what happened. I guess I got through it. And then the next day we were going, because she came right at the end of the work part of the trip. We were going to stay with my aunt and uncle. And I was like, wait, I have to not suspiciously get to like a CVS or something to buy like unlimited more of these to see if they're all positive. And over the next like 2 or 3 days, like she took a few more and they were all positive. I was like, I think at this point, like we should figure out like, what do you do now? Like call like a lady doctor, someone with like a fancy degree tells us, right? And she was like, no. I'm like, we'll do that. But like she was also like, I'm definitely pregnant at this point. And so like it was on some degrees, it was sort of less dramatic and way different than I ever expected because I was on a work trip in California, like working 12 hours, like trying to get like the Accenture consultants to like do all this technical nonsense. And on the other hand, it being on a cross country trip, which I hadn't gone on in years either, um, made it a lot more meaningful.
Man, that's so good. I love
Yeah,
that.
sorry to ramble there for you, but
No, no.
that's what I learned. Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff we want to ramble about, man, because being a dad and expecting to be a dad is like the coolest experience, and anyone who says otherwise is a loser. So we want to hear all about it. Go ahead, Brandon.
I was gonna say finding out is like it's like the oh man, this is getting real part of your marriage, right? You know, so it's exciting.
Yes,
It's always fun, and you know you'll never forget exactly when and where and what everything was when you find out. So it's one of those core memories as a dad. So it's awesome. But let's start with that brutal moment in 2022 where you were needing the seatbelt extender on the flight. You know, you were saying you were over 400 pounds, you were feeling alone. Can you kind of take us back to that low point and like what stirred in you as a man that just kind of made you say enough is enough? Like what prompted you to start the journey?
Yeah, so it was two or three things. One of them being the error on the scale, one of them being that seatbelt extender. But then the other thing was getting when I got so what happened was I needed the seatbelt extender first. When I got back from that trip, I thought I need to get on the scale because I never used to need a seat. I had been bigger, you know, but I never needed a seatbelt extender. Then I got the error message when I on my scale when I got back from that trip. That would have been like the end of May of 22, like, and then those two things combined with the fact that I had just turned 30 and I had just moved into a house that had a staircase. And the stairs, I grew up with in a house with a staircase. Like it wasn't stairs are normal, but it was like way more not like problematic. I don't want to exaggerate, but I was like winded and it was like I was sweating and I was like, yeah, I live in South Carolina, but it's air conditioned and it shouldn't be happening. And at 30 is, you know, when I was in my 20s it was old, but now that I was 30, it didn't feel like I was old. And those things combined because my bedroom was upstairs. I would go upstairs to go to bed, and then I would think about why I was so winded getting up the stairs, and it hit me that like on this trajectory, if this is 30, I don't know if I can accomplish a lot of the stuff in terms of career, in terms of meeting a girl, getting married, becoming a father, anything you want to do. If I've already let myself go, or to this extent, and so something happened. I get asked quite often, like I have an ex relative or ex friend, they need to do some version of what you did. Like, how do I get them to do it? And I've never been able to answer that question well because I don't know, and no one was able to convince me beforehand. So I'm not sure how I would convince someone else to do it. It had to be those things hitting me.
That initial kind of moment of adversity, right? This is something everyone has to face, whatever your challenge is, right? Whatever the thing you're trying to conquer is, whether it's weight, maybe it's defeating some type of addiction, maybe, whatever, right? There's going to be this moment where you feel you've made some progress, and or you do a thing like 75 hard or whatever, right? You do something for a couple months. You can kind of willpower your way through anything for a few months, and then a lot of people kind of backslide because of that moment. They hit that first point of adversity or that first point of like setback or kind of just that raw realization that you've only just begun, and a lot of people give up. So I just want to commend you, Dave, for really sticking to it for real, standing on your conviction and not giving up at the first sign of trouble, and knowing that you had a real battle ahead of you, but actually following through. And then I wanted to touch on real quick the statement you made about like, people asking, well, how do I help this family member or so-and-so? They're in a similar situation. How do I convince them? The honest truth is you can't.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
You can only help them when they decide for themselves they want it, whatever that may be, right? Like I said, it could be weight, it could be addiction, it could be, they're maybe not being a good husband, any of that kind of stuff. If someone has not decided for themselves that they want to make a change, there is nothing anyone else can say to them to make it for them. So that's a word of caution to everyone listening to this, that don't over-invest yourself in people who aren't willing to receive, and that's a dangerous game. You see a lot of people burning a lot of their own energy and then kind of sacrificing even their own families to try and like save this lost little lamb type of situation. And unless that person has decided they want to change, none of your help is actually going to help.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's a good caveat to add. After I took that first step, I got tons of help from all sorts of people. online and offline. But it really, that first step is the key. And it's hard to give that answer. It's probably my most common question, or like after like how'd you meet Arnold, probably maybe second most. But like it's not the answer they want to hear, but I don't feel like I can give them anything else